I welcome you all with love. Today we're doing Bereisheet, a most powerful parsha. And we may spend all the time just on the first few words. Bereisheet bara. What does that mean? It means something came from the nothing. That's a deeper interpretation. And it defies logic, and spiritual life actually defies logic. Is that out of the nothing, prior to creation, time, space, energy, there, in prior to existence, from that nothing emanated the something. Okay, so immediately it's illogical, but way more important to that is, what does that have to do with us? So at one hand, we have creation happening, and it also implies in the beginning was the Word, but there's another piece that is directly related to our spiritual growth, which is, it's an invitation to become God's poem. Well, what does that mean? If from the nothing came the something and all creation came from that, also from the nothing came the image of God as the expression of the nothing. And we go a little further, that expression of the nothing as the image of God, as it applies to our life, and there's two levels of that, which is our mission in the world as well as our internal spiritual development, is the poetry of God. And what does that mean? It means we have choices here. We can live the illusion that we are creating our own reality, and we are creating our own uniqueness, or we can understand that we are the poetry of God unfolding, and that our alignment as we live our lives is aligning with the poetry of God, which comes prior to time, space, and I amness. That's a little bit of a challenge, but it sets things in divine order. Because when we understand that each of us are the poetry of God, we have a way of living in life as the poetic expression of God, as our unique expression and aligned with the divine will. That's pretty exciting. And it adds great meaning to our life as compared to a materialist life where it's nihilistic. What we're talking about is we then begin, from Bereisheet bara, begin to live as the expression of the nothing into the something in the unique way given to us from Hashem. So it's a wake-up call to live in complete alignment with the divine will. So that is an extraordinary way to live, and is the very first message. In terms of enlightenment, which that living as the poetry of Hashem is, it's a whole way of living, we're also understanding of one becomes two, becomes one. That's an interesting and simple way of understanding, is that we come out of the oneness. Bereisheet is duality, alpha, bet, okay, is duality, and we live in duality, and the enlightenment path is to become one again. That's the beauty there. So That's good. Now, we have other aspects of that oneness, is that it's a way of perceiving the multifaceted creation. So in Bereisheet, we're saying it's a multifaceted creation, and as we evolve spiritually, we begin to see the oneness and experience the oneness with the divine and the oneness with all creation, all the multifaceted parts of creation. So it opens our consciousness. Then ultimately, which I write about continually in my book, Torah is a Guide to Enlightenment, is we begin to merge back into the nothing as the oneness. So one becomes two, becomes one. Now we play it out in different ways. Another very, very profound way is in the beginning there was a he atom, she atom, a hermaphrodite, oneness. And in order to be in the play of cosmic consciousness, Hashem broke it from the oneness to the two. A he atom, she atom, separate. Okay? And then, through marriage, through the merging, we come back to the oneness again. One becomes two, becomes one. So we play it out, and so it's inherent in the Torah way of life of going back in relationship into the oneness. And of course, from the oneness, if you have children, you get another oneness. Because each one is a unique expression of the oneness. So in that way, we're also playing out the poem of God. So there's multiple layers of playing out the poetry. Always moving back to the oneness. Ultimately, liberation is the ultimate oneness, and which is the main focus. And relationship is a practice of that, where the two become one flesh when people become married. Okay, so that's that level of poetry. Now, we go a step further, because now we've outlined all of spiritual life, living as the poem of God. That's pretty simple. Always focusing on the oneness. Always remembering where we came from, which is the nothing, becoming the something. If we remember we came from nothing, it's better than thinking you're dust. We came from nothing, and we're part of the something, but the whole spiritual trip is to return to the nothing. And that we do more and more easily as we meditate. Now, from that, there were the utterances. Because in the beginning was the Word. That's another way of interpreting it. And the Word was with God. Okay, but we'll go a little further now. There were 10 utterances. And each utterance created. So what we hear is, the power of the Word creates. And as the image of Hashem, if we're conscious, or even if we're unconscious, the power of the Word creates. We affect reality around us. Now, this is a little bit deeper, but it's good to know that we aren't separate from that. So if we're aware, as the image of God, we are creating energy with our words. It helps us wake up to what we're doing and paying more attention to what we're doing. Now, going a step further, these weren't just words. They were the Hebrew letters. Now let me explain what I mean, because it's key to understand is that in the emanation of creation, we had the tree of life. From the 10 declarations comes the 10 Sephirotic energies. And from the 10 Sephirotic energies, which are the energetics of the tree of life, we get, coming out of that, is the 22 Hebrew letters. But they're not just letters, like you would see in English. There are energies. So when we create a word, or light, we are actually creating light with our words. So it takes it a little deeper. That the letters are energetic configurations. And as we work with the letters, we then become more knowledgeable in creating that. Now, with the tree of life, which is 10 Sephirotic energies becoming 22, when we look at the whole tree of life, there's 32 paths, which turns out to be the 10 Sephirot and the 22 letters. And from that comes the power of creation, the power of the spoken word, the power of enlightenment also. Because the tree of life in this tradition is a model of liberation. Now we go a step further because we're in the tens right now. Okay, so we have the 10 proclamations. Let there be light, and there was light. Then we have the 10 Sephirotic energies, and come from that come the 10 speakings or the 10 commandments. There really weren't commandments. That's honestly not the correct translation, but in a sense, the 10 directives would be more accurate. And so we have the, from the 1 becomes the 10, becomes the 10, becomes the 10, and suddenly a whole universe is being created and a whole way of life is being created. Now, within the 10 Sephirah, Keter, which is the highest of the Sephirot, has the what we call the gematria, or what people think of numerology, of 620. Now, it turns out that instead of 613 mitzvot that most people think, there really are 620 because there were 7 Sephirot, 7 additional mitzvot that the ancient sages added. And that brings it together to the 620. So all this is kind of involved and entwined in the overall picture. Now, from that, we begin to look at some patterns. I just shared one pattern. Another pattern is the 1-4 pattern. Okay, what am I talking about? Well, the 1-4 pattern means from the 1 comes the 4. So the primordial 1-4 pattern is from the 1 comes the name Hashem. Yud-K Vav-K, the 4. When we look at the relationship of the tree of duality, good and evil, and the tree of life, the numbers of those are again a 4-1 pattern. As the tree of life is 233, and the tree of duality is 932. Exactly 4-1 reality. The oneness of the tree of life, not understood, becomes the tree of duality. So, we also have from Gan Eden, came out a river, which is light to the world, and the one river comes out as 4 rivers reaching the whole world. So we have these patterns, and from that, from the oneness, we have the 4 elements. From the oneness, we have the 4 levels of creation. And I won't go into the details of every single one, but the point is, from the 1 comes the 4. And again, this is right there in Bereisheet. So we're looking at the multi-levels. In the beginning was the Word, and also the nothing from the something, and then from that, Hashem spoke, and it was good, 10 of those, which is all creation. Now, there's another word in that is Bereisheet. Bereisheet para. Now, if we look at Bereisheet, which is, again, an initiating energy, something really interesting happens, because when we begin working with the Hebrew letters, we start to get all kinds of beginnings. And that's a key. So it speaks to the cosmic fire. And that's one of the ways it relates to it. And that cosmic fire comes out of, again, it comes out of the darkness. Okay, the illuminated darkness. So from the darkness comes the light. That's why, one of the reasons why in the Hebrew tradition we go from darkness to light. We go from night to day as how the day starts. And it's called Hoshek. It's the unrevealed light that's glowing in the darkness. And if people have gone into the void, there's a glow to it. I'm talking about meditation. There's a glow to it, and that glow is the Hoshek, the illuminated darkness, which then gives forth, let there be light. That's pretty interesting when we begin to understand it. It also says, be in awe. Another way of saying it, the awe of Shabbat. So it talks about awe is a way from the very primordial beginning of understanding the divine. And it doesn't say fear, it says awe. And then it brings in Shabbat. Shabbat's got an interesting role here, because it comes at the end of the 6 days. Bereisheet also means creation from the 6. Okay, so it talks about the 6 days, but there we have Shabbat. Okay, now that gets kind of interesting. So Shabbat is really the primary energy, and it is the covenant. The honoring of Shabbat is really honoring the covenant, the eternal covenant with Hashem. So that's pretty interesting. But Bereisheet gets moved in that way. That's what makes it more interesting. And as I said, we have the awe, we have the Shabbat. So Shabbat isn't really about resting. It's about going inward to experience our eternal covenant with the divine. That's not exactly a rest. It's a whole other thing. Now, the message, and I'm going to skip a little bit to the Cain and Abel story, because it's a very important part of the story of Shabbat. So, Cain had the idea of making an offering to Hashem. So, he and his brother, Abel, which is also known as Hevel, both made an offering. Well, Cain made a second string offering. He didn't give the best animal. It was like, what? Okay. And Hevel gave the best vegetable. Okay. And I'm sorry, reverse that. He gave Cain gave the best, second best vegetable, and Hevel gave the best animal. Okay. And that's what was accepted. Well, Cain went into the primordially, I'm going to say, negative emotions, anger, and jealousy, and grief. In this case, grief, if we have to understand what I'm saying, and melted down and ultimately killed his brother. As we go a little deeper in the teaching, and I'm going to divert slightly, is that as we look at some of the deeper spiritual teachings, one of my rabbis, Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, who I was his doctor for too, taught that if people dwelt in anger, jealousy, and grief, they couldn't receive the influx of the divine energy that is promised to us during the holy times of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. Couldn't receive it because these dysfunctional emotions, but our human emotions, were in control. Now, it doesn't mean people don't have those emotions. The question is, how do we transmute that so they aren't in control? It was the whole thing about seeing crouches at the doorway and Hashem saying, hey, Cain, cool it. You'll be okay. Focus on this and don't let it control you. But he couldn't do that. But that was his information. That's a really important piece of information, is an important teaching, is yes, we have it, don't worry about it, take care of it. Understand how to transmute those back into the light, so it doesn't block you from the divine influx. Okay, so Cain kills his brother. All these things go on, but I just want to make one point about it, is that he repents, and Hashem says, okay, you won't be chased 7 days of the week. You get to have Shabbat too. And on Shabbat, you're safe, everything's good. Now that's kind of like us, isn't it? People are wandering around for 6 days on the planet, being chased and chasing and creating their chaos as we see that's going on. But on the seventh day, we're relieved of that struggle. The forces of darkness can't really touch us. So that's the cosmic understanding. So that's another way of understanding Shabbat that gets played out as the covenant that Cain also had. You see, he had the covenant of Shabbat. He eventually be, it's prophesied that he'll be the first the great rabbi of the third temple because of his transformation. That's another point, the power of transformation. And that is inherent again as Bereisheet gets transformed. It leads us to the power. Now, I'm going to explain it a little bit more because it comes really at the end of the 6 days and God's creation and what God created, and then it says, made. So what's the word made doing in there? Well, I already said created. Isn't that obvious? But the word made actually means repentance. Okay? It means to redo. Okay? And so we're having the opportunity and the directive to not only repent, but in a sense, recover the lost sparks. And that's an important idea, is that this redemption of the sparks, which is what it means, is that the role of humans is to create an overall redemption on the planet. So it's said in the previous creation, not civilization, this is before this time-space creation, there was a tree of life that couldn't hold the energy and blew up, fractured. And somehow, through time and space, whatever, in the creation process, they land here, those fragments of light of the vessels, and our job is to redeem them. That's key here. And that's what it means to make. Also translates as to redeem. Of course, we have to redeem ourselves, which is what I was just talking about. And they're redeeming or rectifying the fallen sparks of light that are in all creation. And we bring them back. And in the redeeming of those fallen sparks, we then create light for the world. So that's in there in the statement about really Shabbat, the so-called God rested, and creation was finished and made. But the made means all this work we're talking about is us redeeming the fallen sparks. So our work is set out for us. So what does that mean? Okay, well, it means that in all our interactions with all the aspects of creation, we see the light in them. We see the spark of the divine in them. In our simple act of seeing them, we redeem them. We recover them. And they get released back into a power of the cosmos. So that's pretty heavy. Now, we're going back to Bereisheet again. And another translation is, we're the daughter of God. What that means is, all of us in relationship to God are the children of God. The daughter is the Shekinah energy that permeates all creation, and we become aligned with that. You see? And that deepens our spiritual path in that way. So, and then there's another variation of Bereisheet, which is called the Father's Song, which is as we look at it further, it wasn't a word that made creation, but it was a song of God that made creation. So creation comes as a song of the divine, and that's a deeper teaching in that. Kind of interesting, okay? And so thinking about the importance of music and the song of God, and as we sing, we become the song of God. So we're the song of God, we're also the poetry of God. So we have all these levels just from Bereisheet. There's more, but the key is Bereisheet Bara is huge in terms of understanding all of spiritual life. So it's all laid out in the first two words. And our work from the nothing into the duality, Bereisheet, is then using these clues, using these directives, using these teachings to guide ourselves back to the one. So may everybody be blessed that we are able to enjoy the duality as our spiritual path, and return to the one. One becoming two, becoming one. May we all have success in enlightenment.